Today, I have a very big unboxing. It's also very heavy. So I finally got my studio display with the VESA mount. The mount was a free option, but it did require 2 extra months of patiently waiting. Let's just unbox this thing now. All right, so it comes in this pretty well packaged box. There's even a cloth handle right here. And then on the back of the box, we have what the studio display looks like from the back. And I'm gonna have to stand up for this section because this box is thick. This is the only piece of tape that is sealing the box. A very long and satisfying peel. And I think we can just lift it like this. Okay. Oh. The lid of this box actually doesn't come off completely. It's connected by this hinge. I see these 2 arrows over here, so I think we just pull it. Here is the studio display. Oh my god, it's so heavy. It's covered in this recyclable paper material, so let's peel this off. The mount area is also covered in paper. So this is the power cable that's unremovable. And just like the box, it is also very thick. It is pretty much permanently attached to the studio display. And if you want to remove it, you can either pull really, really hard or get a special tool. And we have one more very satisfying peel. And here is the studio display from the front, from the side, and from the back. There's one more thing in the box. I believe this is the Thunderbolt cable, and here it is. It feels pretty similar to the power cord. Both of these are braided and are pretty good quality. And there's nothing else in the box besides cardboard support. So the studio display that I got just has the VESA mount. I just got the standard glass, so no nano texture. And we'll see later how reflective this thing is. I do really like the all aluminum body. I think it looks very nice and sleek, but it does make this thing very, very heavy. I'm actually concerned whether the monitor arm that I already have can even hold this thing up. And this thing is actually quite thick. It can even stand on its own. I don't even need to mount this thing. It can literally just sit on my desk like this. Okay, so we'll see more of the display once I set everything up, but for now, let's take a look at the back. The Apple logo is right in the middle of the VESA mount, and it's got 4 ports. One of them is Thunderbolt and the other 3 are USB-C. It's also got a bunch of speaker grills up here and down here. And yeah, that's it with the physical design. And now let's go set this thing up at my desk. But first, we have to take down my old monitor. And this one is a 4K monitor from Acer. It was pretty good value for the price, but I am very excited to be upgrading to this sharper and more colorful 5K display. All right, so it's been a few days now. I've set up the studio monitor here at my desk, and probably my favorite thing about this thing is the glossy screen. Monitors with glossy screens are pretty rare, but I think a glossy screen just looks so much better than a matte finish screen. And this is because, first of all, not having the extra diffusion layer on top, which is typically plastic, just makes everything on a glossy screen look a bit sharper. And also when it comes to the reflections, if you imagine the monitor screen to be a mirror, the stuff that you wouldn't be able to see in the mirror won't really affect the glossy screen. For example, right now I only have one light on above the monitors, and you can barely see it in the glossy screen. However, on my old matte screen, this light source is making parts of the screen look hazy and therefore quite significantly reducing the contrast. And so in a moderately lit room, glossy screens will typically look as if it's got more contrast and also more vibrant colors compared to a matte screen. But the reflections that you do see in glossy screens are definitely way more clear than in matte screens, so they can be pretty distracting. However, for the studio display, I don't really think reflections are a big problem because it can go very bright, to 600 nits at max. Now, my desk is near some pretty big windows, so the room can definitely get pretty bright for me, but I've always been able to set up brightness so that I see very little reflections in the studio display. So the 600 nits is definitely bright enough for me, and I think it'll be for most people as well. most of the time I don't use this thing at full brightness. Now, my old monitor could only go up to 300 nits, which wasn't really enough because sometimes when it got really bright, it was hard to see the screen even at full brightness. But one specific problem with glossy screens is that it's very hard to deal with a direct light source from behind you. As you can see, a matte screen diffuses out to be much more tolerable, whereas in a glossy screen, there's no diffusion, and so it just remains this bright, piercing spot. So a matte monitor is a safer choice if you don't have much control over your environment, but if you do, I think a glossy monitor can provide a better visual experience. So I'm definitely super excited to start using this glossy screen. And I also like the extra sharpness from this display being 5K. Text definitely looks sharper on it than on a 4K display, and this difference is especially obvious for smaller text, even at a regular sitting distance. For me, I'm always on the more space setting, so everything on my screen is on the smaller side, and this extra sharpness definitely helps. I also looked at many 4K and 8K photos and videos, but to be honest, the difference in sharpness between them on a 5K screen is barely noticeable versus my old 4K screen. I did think that the photos and videos look better on the studio display, but I feel like that has more to do with it being glossy rather than it being 5K. Also, I just love how easy it is to adjust the brightness on the studio display. I can do it directly from the keyboard, which is just such a luxury considering that many other monitors require you to fiddle around with the clunky buttons in the back. The P3 wide color gamut is great to have, and the factory color profile is pretty good too, better than most other monitors out there. So it's a great experience right out of the box, and it looks very consistent with the MacBook. Now, I'm not really a fan of how thick the bezels are out here in the front, but I guess that's what's needed for a webcam and good speakers. I do like the aluminum design, but I don't see it very often since my desk faces the wall. I think the webcam is very convenient to have, especially if you're driving the monitor with a Mac Mini or Mac Studio. There were some webcam quality issues, but I did install the update, which should have fixed it, and I'd say the webcam quality looks alright. It's nothing spectacular, but it'll get the job done, and I think it's usable for meetings. And here's how the mic sounds. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. I feel like overall it's pretty good. I think my voice does sound pretty clean and clear. The speakers on the studio display are great, which was a nice surprise because typically monitor speakers sound pretty bad, but I would say these are on par with my MacBook speakers. Alright, so those were the things that I really liked about the monitor, and I would say overall I do like the product, but there were some downsides that I need to tell you guys. So the biggest downside of this monitor, I would say, is the lack of compatibility. The only input is this single Thunderbolt port. So there's lots of things that you cannot connect to it. I used to connect my Xbox and Nintendo Switch to my old monitor, but I cannot connect either of them to the studio display. I even bought this thing from Amazon that converts HDMI into DP alt mode and pumps it into this USB-C cable, but even this failed. Honestly, this could be a deal breaker for me just because the studio display is such an expensive monitor and it's got a great screen. I'm not even asking for a 5K image. I just want to be able to play Flight Sim and Mario Kart on it at 1080p, and it can't even display any of those. And that really dampened this entire experience for me. Also, the studio display doesn't support HDR because it doesn't have the required brightness and contrast. This isn't a huge deal for me because there's not much content out there that's in HDR yet. But personally, I do like HDR a lot. I think it just looks so vivid, so much more like in real life. Currently, I edit all of my vlogs in HDR, so I guess for now, I'll still have to edit my vlogs on my MacBook screen. And lastly, the screen is only 60 Hertz, which I'm not really a big fan of just because for stuff like moving my cursor, moving my windows, scrolling, doing anything really, it definitely feels noticeably more sluggish compared to my MacBook screen, which has 120 Hertz. But I really do want a glossy monitor, and there's pretty much no other option out there. So I'm willing to just take this 60 Hertz trade-off. Although recently I did become aware of the Eve Spectrum. It's a glossy monitor with 4K and 144 Hertz, so I do hope I can check that out when it becomes available. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and found it entertaining and helpful. If you did, remember to give this video a thumbs up and also be sure to subscribe to my channel down below. Here are the rest of my social media media, so you can follow me on other platforms if you would like to. Also, be sure to check out my previous video right over here. I compared the iPhone 13 Pro and the S22 Ultra in a real life setting. And yeah, that's all that I have to say for this video. I really hope to see you in another one of my videos. Bye!